Our next guest is a studio anchor and correspondent in RT's Washington, D.C. bureau, otherwise known as Russia Today. And as the host of her own show, Breaking the Set, she cuts through the false left-right paradigm and pre-established narrative set in the corporate news and political establishment. She's known for undermining the mainstream media propaganda while calling out the real players behind the scenes. She also happens to be a talented visual artist. Ladies and gentlemen, we now present Abby Martin.
Candidates, the corporatocracy. I can't wait for this to be over. Word. New York Times, welcome to the This Administration Has No Credibility Club. Remind me again why it is that people are worshiping kings and queens in the year 2013. So I have a novel idea. Instead of blaming the whistleblower for trying to evade death by way of the Espionage Act, you actually talk about what the NSA revelations are.
In a constitutional republic democracy, this is not informed consent by those who are governed. This is manufactured consent, and I would actually argue it's coerced consent in secret.
Guys, this is not about safety. It's not about terrorism. This is about chilling dissent and controlling society. Live, die, die. Isn't he dead already?
You can't conduct these kinds of wars around the world, killing innocent people in the pursuit of a few bad guys, and pretend that it's not going to come back to hurt you.
Did you find the logic flawed now, looking back? Do you regret your vote to invade and occupy a country to find one man?
See, we ought to be critical of highly concentrated forms of power wherever we find it, because that kind of power is usually subject to chronic abuse.
Hello, Abby. I'm Stephanie from Nestle. We saw the video you posted on YouTube criticizing Nestle over water. So here's our response.
Walmart's also been described as an economic Death Star, destroying everything in its path, leaving behind nothing more than a homogeneous wasteland. So the harmless activist is now the criminal, yet actual criminal banksters run free. Well, I'm glad this government has its priorities straight. So, do you shackle down your mind and subscribe to old school paradigms? Or do you liberate yourself by acknowledging reality? Sure, the world would lose its innocence, but wouldn't you rather know the truth?
What's up? Wouldn't you rather know the truth? What's going on, guys? I'm Abby Martin. That was a little kind of sample, the best of clips from the first season of Breaking the Set, my show on RT America, to celebrate the first season of over 200 episodes. So it's really, really awesome. Thank you. For all y'all fans, that's really cool. Thanks for coming out to see me speak. My roots have always been in activism. Since I was 18. In the wake of 9/11, I became an anti-war activist, and then a 9/11 truth activist, and then a media activist when I realized that without a medium to tell your message, you can't get heard. So I started my own media organization called Media Roots, where I produced hundreds of multimedia stories covering the front lines of Occupy Oakland, etc. And that's the premise of how Breaking the Set came into fruition, was taking the concept of that kind of that grassroots activism and cultivating media and bringing it to light on a larger platform. Needless to say, though, researching traumatic as fuck news on a daily basis is debilitating, severely depressing. Something that's always kept me sane is art. I started making abstract art as purely a catharsis for the political activism that had dominated my life at the time. And there's always been one quote that stuck with me throughout my artistic evolution. It's by the great jazz singer and human rights activist Nina Simone, who said that an artist's duty is to reflect the times. And in that vein, I realized that art is one of the most powerful tools that you have to relay profound social commentary through symbolism and imagery alone. And right now, art is facing a severe existential crisis. Not only are we seeing art is one of the first programs cut from public education across the nation, but there's a serious lack of prominent political artists that challenge the status quo. Many political artists have become victims of mass commercialization and corporatization, and in turn, their message becomes very diluted. One of the best examples I can think of is Shepard Fairey, the artist who coined the viral Obey brand, someone who I used to admire tremendously, and that's really where this image came from. It's a depiction on one of Shepard Fairey's prints, Make Art, Not War. It's my interpretation of his works, which he takes, old propaganda posters from various revolutionary struggles. A lot of it's plagiarized, but that's besides the point. But unfortunately, Fairey became the very thing that he opposed. I mean, he coined the most prominent image that pushed through Obama's election in his presidency. So it became almost a mockery of himself. But after coming to terms with this hypocrisy, I realized how much blood, sweat, and tears that true artists pour over their works is overlooked. And it's been replaced by mass-produced Walmart prints for $10 or a bourgeois, highbrow, elite art gallery culture. And also, I was living in Oakland for a while, a city that was alleged to be one of the largest counterculture art hubs in the nation, yet I wasn't seeing that there. And I was really shocked at how little political art I actually saw throughout the city. So that's when I decided to shift my artistic focus into critiquing the very things that I rallied against with my words on a daily basis. I wanted to show you a next piece. Do I point it up here? Sweet. It's called Addendum, and it was inspired by watching the documentary Zeitgeist, Addendum. When I saw that movie, I mean, it's a total mindfuck, but when I saw it, lucidly broke down so many obvious and blatant truths about the system that we live under, the real economic system in which we live. I wanted Addendum to symbolize the rotating mask of a sitting president, placed for the world to see, while the banking system, the Federal Reserve, along with other corporate figureheads who remain unelected, yield extraordinary influence over domestic and foreign policy from behind the curtain of a faux democracy. So there's Bush with In God We Trust, and it just shows kind of this religious dogma that perpetuates this narrative when really the banking is kind of controlling this puppetry. Moving on to the next piece. Oh no. Yes. Killing Hope. It's obviously a depiction of Obama's logo. Never before Obama's presidential campaign had I ever seen a candidate brand themselves like a corporation. His official logo, as you all know, is that giant blue O sun rising over this dawn of a supposed new horizon, a new beginning, one that never came. Almost a year into his second term, Obama's not only perpetuated the most horrendous, unjust, and inhumane policies of the Bush administration, but he's exacerbated them. My interpretation of his logo is where the American stripes are spilling into a deep pool of blood, one that represents the carnage and death that has been a result of his horrendous policies. It also represents the slow death of the false sense of hope that his campaign galvanized. Broken promise after broken promise. People are finally breaking out of that baseless propaganda and empty rhetoric and realizing that true change can only come through peace, love, strength, not a marketing campaign financed by bloodthirsty military contractors and corrupt banks. This next piece is called Blood on Their Hands. It was fun to make. It represents the criminal complicity of the entire political and corporate establishment. Democrats and Republicans, they're two heads of the same beast. We all know this. And the two-party dictatorship is really this false choice presented to us by the real rulers, the corporatocracy. They're unelected. And one that keeps the masses enslaved and raping and pillaging the earth for profit. And another collage, this is when I started to do collage work, but this one's called Dystopia. This is depicting kind of a post-apocalyptic future of a total police and surveillance state where the people are modern-day proles and Obama is a proud figurehead for it. This one I made in the wake of the BP oil spill. It's called BP's Holocaust of Sea Creatures. And I was really deeply impacted by the Deepwater Horizon explosion and the subsequent toxifying of the Gulf Coast with millions of gallons of crude oil. Bush and Obama are both depicted in it because, as we know, both are equally complicit in the continuation of a two-tiered justice system. One where corporations like BP can poison the world's oceans. Yet instead of getting punished, they're rewarded with more government contracts. We saw this in the wake of the spill, where BP continued to get government contracts. In fact, they were the Pentagon's main oil and gas provider. I mean, how fucked up is that? Meanwhile, the critters of the ocean, all the fish, all the critters of the ocean are suffering. No one's left to speak for them. It pisses me off, sorry. Next, thanks. This is riot cops. This is a photo that I took of a line of militarized riot police in the wake of Oscar Grant's assassination in Fruitvale, close to Oakland. The cops look so absurdly robotic and aggressive and insane with their paramilitary batons that I just wanted to take this terror and intimidation and make it into something beautiful and whimsical. And can we go next? This was in the wake of the Fukushima nuclear meltdown. I was deeply impacted by what happened in Fukushima because I didn't realize the perils of nuclear energy until that time. I didn't realize the technological insanity that we were facing, the horrifying reality of the pitfalls of this technology. The image was intended to show the utter despair of humanity in the wake of Mother Nature's wrath, where a technology we created ended up wreaking untold havoc on humanity because of the carelessness and short-sightedness of humankind. But turning to more positive art, I wanted to now share a piece called Dream Peace. I mean, it's inspired by the notion that inner and global peace is something that we as a people should continuously strive for. And really, every day as the sun rises, it gives us a new chance, a new beginning to be better people. Really, that's really what it's all about. And and the next piece is called Earth Awakening. It looks like it's the product of an acid trip, which it probably was. But it's really intended to show the beauty of this planet and all of life's forms. I wanted to relay this explosion of consciousness and love, a vision that connects all of us together in all the cycles of life and death and everything in between. And lastly, the next image I wanted to show is called Universal Consciousness. I believe in a future where we can align ourselves together to expand and broaden our collective consciousness, and not just to advance and secure this planet's survival, but also to acknowledge that our lives are merely a blip in the planetary cycle of the universe. Life is about something greater than me, than you, than anyone. And sometimes it helps to realize how small we truly are in the grand scheme of everything. At the end of the day, the truth is the meaning of everything that I just showed you is really hard to articulate because language is so limiting. And art is really just a window into someone else's soul. And it's also a window into your own. Because all art is a question mark that only you know the answer to. But in the broader picture, the warped value system in which we live has conditioned us to consider art as something unattainable, as something unapproachable, as a rich man's hobby, like President Bush. Because the powers that be know that only through artistic expression and imagination, which go hand in hand, can we envision a better world and work to create one. If you're passionate about something, it is in part your responsibility to express that passion and reflect it in a medium that speaks most to you. So I implore all of you to heed the great Nina Simone's advice. In a world so corrupt with so much injustice, is it not our duty to reflect the ugly truths instead of feeding into the very institutions that work to suppress them? And is it not our duty to imagine something greater that we know is possible, that we all deserve for the sake of the planet, and relay that vision to change and inspire the world. Thank you.
Thank you, Abby Martin.